I'm Amber Johnson, 27 years old, living in a cramped apartment while working two exhausting jobs. Meanwhile, my younger sister Tiffany, 24, has always been the golden child. Last month at our parents' anniversary dinner, they presented her with keys to a fully paid house. Me? I got a printout of an entry-level job listing. The looks of pity from relatives burned, but I smiled through it all. Little did they know, I'd been planning something that would leave them speechless. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if family drama stories resonate with you. Growing up in suburban Boston, the pattern was set early. Our middle-class neighborhood of colonial-style homes and neatly trimmed lawns was where I first noticed the difference in how my parents, Linda and Scott Johnson, treated us. Our house on Maple Street wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable. A 4-bedroom home with a backyard swing set where Tiffany would demand to be pushed for hours while I did homework at the patio table. Every August before school started, Mom would take Tiffany shopping for a completely new wardrobe, trendy jeans, cute tops, and brand-name sneakers that made her squeal with delight. I'd get handed down Tiffany's barely worn clothes from the previous year, despite being the older sister. "They're practically new, Amber," Mom would say, "and we need to save for college." Somehow, that saving logic never applied to Tiffany. When I brought home straight A's on my report card, Dad would nod and say, "That's what we expect from you." When Tiffany managed B's and C's, they'd celebrate with ice cream and praise her for trying her best. The day I was accepted into the National Honor Society, my parents skipped the ceremony for Tiffany's soccer game, where she spent the entire time on the bench. They don't mean to play favorites. My grandmother Evelyn would tell me when I'd visit her apartment, seeking refuge from the blatant inequality. Grandma Evelyn, with her silver hair always perfectly styled and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, was the only one who seemed to notice. "Your sister needs more attention because she struggles. You're the strong one." Being the strong one meant working after-school jobs throughout high school, while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. It meant applying for every scholarship I could find, collecting recommendation letters, and spending weekends writing essays instead of going to parties. Meanwhile, Tiffany dated the quarterback, came home past curfew reeking of beer, and still got breakfast in bed the next morning because she had such a rough night. When college acceptance letters arrived, I received a full academic scholarship to Boston University's finance program. My parents' response? "That's good, honey. It'll save us money." 2 weeks later, when Tiffany decided she might want to try community college, they took her out for a celebratory dinner and promised to cover all her expenses. "You don't need to keep score," Grandma Evelyn advised during one of our weekly phone calls my freshman year of college. "Your worth isn't measured by how they treat you compared to your sister." "But it's not fair," I argued, sitting on my dorm room floor, surrounded by textbooks I'd purchased with my own money from my campus job. "Life rarely is," she replied. "But bitterness will only poison you, not them. Focus on building your life. Your success will speak volumes." I took her advice to heart, swallowing my resentment and channeling that energy into my studies. While Tiffany switched majors 3 times before settling on communications, it has the least math, she'd explained proudly. I graduated with honors and landed an entry-level position at Heritage Financial Group. Every holiday and family gathering continued the pattern. Tiffany would arrive late, make a dramatic entrance, and immediately become the center of attention. My parents would hang on her every word, offering help before she even asked for it. I'd arrive on time with a thoughtful dish or gift, only to be greeted with distracted hellos and questions about whether I could help in the kitchen. "They'll see your value eventually," Grandma Evelyn promised during our private conversations. "Just keep being the amazing woman you are." I wanted to believe her, but each year that passed made it harder to hold on to hope that my parents would ever see me as more than Tiffany's responsible older sister, the reliable one who needed no attention, no support, no recognition. After graduation, I committed myself fully to my career at Heritage Financial. I arrived early, stayed late, and volunteered for projects no one else wanted. Within 2 years, I was promoted to junior financial analyst, handling accounts for small business clients throughout New England. My apartment was small but neat, A one-bedroom in a less desirable part of Boston that I decorated with second-hand furniture and plants. Every piece was paid for with my own money, a point of pride that sustained me through moments of doubt. Meanwhile, Tiffany continued to live at home rent-free, her bedroom unchanged from high school with boy band posters and fairy lights. After a half-hearted internship at a local radio station, she cycled through a series of jobs. Receptionist, quit after 3 weeks because the office vibe was toxic. Barista, fired for consistent tardiness. Social media assistant, the company downsized. And retail associate at 5 different stores. Tiffany's just finding herself. Mom would explain during our monthly family dinners. Not everyone knows their path right away like you did, Amber. What they never acknowledged was that my path wasn't some magical calling I'd discovered. It was a pragmatic choice made by a young woman who knew from an early age that she'd need to support herself, to build my savings faster. I took on a second job as an online financial advisor 3 evenings a week. While my friends were dating or taking weekend trips, I was working 60-hour weeks, building a client base and investing aggressively. Congratulations on the new job, sweetie. Mom gushed at Sunday dinner, clasping her hands together. For a moment, my heart lifted until I realized she was talking to Tiffany, who had just announced her latest position as a sales associate at a boutique downtown. They give me 30% off everything in the store, Tiffany explained, twirling her pasta. And the manager said I have a real eye for fashion. That's wonderful, Dad said, refilling her wine glass. You'll be running the place in no time. I took a sip of water and waited for someone to ask about my recent promotion to senior analyst, which I'd mentioned in our family group chat the previous week. The question never came. You got a promotion? Jessica asked later that week. My colleague and closest friend, Jessica Chun, had joined Heritage Financial the same year I did. We often grabbed lunch together, comparing notes on office politics and investment strategies. Senior analyst, I confirmed, unwrapping my sandwich. It came with a 15% raise. Did you celebrate? Please tell me you at least bought yourself something nice. I shrugged. I increased my 401k contribution and put the rest into my investment account. Jessica rolled her eyes. Of course you did. And let me guess, your family wasn't impressed? They were busy celebrating Tiffany's new job selling overpriced clothes to tourists. You should say something, Jessica urged, not for the first time. Tell them how it makes you feel when they ignore your accomplishments. I shook my head. Grandma Evelyn always said actions speak louder than words. Complaining won't change anything. Maybe not. But it might make you feel better to get it off your chest. Or it might make me look petty and jealous. I carefully rewrapped the uneaten half of my sandwich. I'd rather save my energy for things I can control. What Jessica didn't understand was that I'd given up on winning my parents' approval years ago. What sustained me now was the growing conviction that one day, my success would be impossible to ignore. My parents' 30th anniversary fell on a Saturday in June. Mom had planned an elaborate backyard celebration, inviting extended family and neighbors for a catered dinner under rented white tents. I arrived at noon to help set up, wearing a blue sundress I'd splurged on for the occasion. Oh good, you're here, Mom said, barely looking up from her clipboard. The florist delivered the centerpieces to the garage instead of the patio. Could you move them? For the next 3 hours I arranged flowers, set tables, and directed the catering staff while Mom supervised and Dad grilled with his brothers. Tiffany was nowhere to be seen. Shouldn't Tiffany be helping? Asked, wiping sweat from my forehead after lugging ice bags to the drink stations. She's getting her hair done for the party, Mom explained. You know how important these photos will be. Guests began arriving at 4. I circulated with trays of appetizers, made sure elderly relatives found comfortable seats, and kept an eye on the children racing around the yard. 5:30. A full hour after the party had started, Tiffany made her entrance. She looked stunning in a pink dress, her blonde hair styled in loose waves, professionally applied makeup highlighting her blue eyes identical to mine, though no one ever seemed to notice. Sorry I'm late, she announced, air-kissing relatives as she made her way through the crowd. Traffic was insane coming from the salon. There she is, Dad beamed, abandoning his conversation with Uncle Paul mid-sentence. The beautiful baby of the family. I watched from the corner where I'd been chatting with my second cousin, feeling like I was 16 again. Invisible in my sister's presence. Dinner was served at 6, followed by speeches and toasts to my parents' marriage. After dessert, Mom stood and clinked her glass for attention. "Scott and I want to thank everyone for celebrating with us today," she said, smiling as Dad joined her. 30 years has flown by, and we've been reflecting on what matters most: family. Dad nodded. "We've been blessed with 2 daughters who bring us endless joy." His eyes drifted to Tiffany, who was checking her phone under the table. "And today, we want to share that joy through some special gifts." Mom reached beneath the head table and brought out 2 envelopes. My stomach tightened with familiar dread. "Tiffany, sweetheart, come up here," she called. Tiffany bounced up, nearly knocking over her water glass in excitement. She hugged both parents before accepting the larger of the 2 envelopes. With dramatic flair, she opened it and screamed, "Oh my God! Are you serious?" She pulled out a key attached to a heart-shaped keychain. "Is this what I think it is?" Dad put his arm around her shoulders. "We know you've been struggling to save for a place of your own, so we decided to help. It's the cottage on Lakeview Drive. We closed on it last week. It's all yours, sweetie." The cottage on Lakeview Drive. A charming 2-bedroom house in a desirable neighborhood less than 10 minutes from my parents' home. I'd driven past it many times, admiring its stone facade and yard full of mature maple trees. Relatives erupted in applause as Tiffany jumped up and down, tears streaming down her face. "I can't believe it. My own house. This is the best gift ever." "Amber," Mom called next, her voice noticeably less enthusiastic, "we have something for you too." I walked to the front on legs that felt disconnected from my body. The smaller envelope felt light in my hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a printout of a job listing for an entry-level financial assistant position at a local bank. "We saw this and thought of you," Dad explained. "It's closer to our house than your current job, and we know how you've always been interested in finance. The starting salary looks pretty good." I stared at the paper. The position required a high school diploma and paid approximately half my current salary. After 6 years in the industry and 2 promotions, my parents thought this was an appropriate gift. The silence stretched as relatives realized what was happening. From the corner of my eye, I could see Aunt Diane whispering to Uncle Robert, both wearing expressions of discomfort. Cousin Michael suddenly became very interested in his napkin. Grandma Evelyn, seated at the far end of the table, pressed her lips together in a thin line, her eyes communicating everything her mouth couldn't say. "Thank you," I managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "I'll look into it." "Isn't this key just gorgeous?" Tiffany interrupted, holding up her gift for everyone to admire. "Dad, can we go see the house right now? I want to start planning where my furniture will go." The attention immediately shifted back to Tiffany, and I used the opportunity to slip away, walking calmly to the bathroom in the main house. Once inside, I locked the door, turned on the fan to mask any sound, and sank to the floor. My back against the cool bathtub. My phone buzzed in my purse. "Grandma Evelyn." "I saw," she said when I answered, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I saw it all." "It's fine," I whispered, pressing a cold washcloth to my eyes. "I'm fine." "It's not fine, Amber. What they did was cruel. They didn't mean it that way." Even now I was making excuses for them. "Intent doesn't change impact," Grandma said firmly. "But listen to me. This isn't about them anymore. It's about you deciding how to respond." I took a deep breath. "What would you do?" "I'd remember who I am. The strong, capable woman who doesn't need handouts or approval. I'd dry my tears, hold my head high, and go back out there with dignity. Then I'd go home and make a plan." A plan for what? For showing them exactly who they underestimated. After we hung up, I repaired my makeup, straightened my dress, and returned to the party with a serene smile. I joined my grandmother at her table, pouring her a fresh cup of coffee. "To 30 years of marriage," I said later, raising my glass when it was my turn to toast my parents. "May we all find relationships that stand the test of time." If anyone noticed the slight tremor in my hand as I drank, they didn't mention it. At 11, I was the last guest to leave, having stayed to help clean up while Tiffany accompanied our parents to see her new house. I drove home in silence, streetlights illuminating my tears as I navigated through empty roads, my mind already calculating, planning, determining what would come next. Sleep eluded me that night. I sat cross-legged on my bed, surrounded by photo albums I rarely opened. Images of birthdays, holidays, and family vacations told the story I tried to deny for years. In photo after photo, Tiffany stood center stage, blowing out candles, opening the biggest present, being embraced by our beaming parents. I appeared at the edges, often partially cropped out, my smile never quite reaching my eyes. I set the albums aside and opened my laptop, pulling up my financial spreadsheets. At 27, I had managed to save $68,432 through aggressive budgeting and wise investments. My 401k had another $42,000. My stock portfolio, begun with my first paycheck at 19, had grown steadily despite market fluctuations. I created a new folder titled Project Independence and started researching real estate in my parents' neighborhood. Properties there typically sold for $350,000 to $500,000, well beyond my current savings. But what about foreclosures? Fixer-uppers? Properties just outside the most desirable streets? At 3 a.m., I emailed Mason Bradford, a real estate agent whose business card I'd picked up at a networking event months earlier, looking for investment property in the Lakeview area. I wrote, budget flexible with right opportunity. Available to discuss this week. The next morning, despite my fatigue, I arrived at work early and requested a meeting with my supervisor, Daniel Wilson. I'm looking to accelerate my savings over the next 6 months, I explained in his office. I'd like to take on additional projects if there's opportunity for overtime or bonuses. Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying me. You're already one of our hardest workers, Amber. But as it happens, we're launching a new advisory service for first-time investors. It would mean evening consultations twice a week, plus some weekend seminars. The compensation would be considerable. I'm interested, I said immediately. It would be in addition to your regular workload, not replacing it. I understand. He smiled. I thought you might say that. I'll email you the details this afternoon. Mason responded to my email by lunchtime, suggesting we meet that evening. After work, I drove to his downtown office, where he greeted me with a firm handshake and curious expression. When you say investment property, he asked after we'd settled in his conference room, are you looking for rental income, future resale value, or a place to live yourself? All of the above. I answered honestly. I want a solid investment that I could potentially occupy. For the next hour, we discussed market trends, property taxes, and mortgage options. Mason pulled up listings on his computer, discarding most as either too expensive or requiring too much renovation for a first-time buyer. There is one possibility, he said finally, clicking on a listing that hadn't hit the public market yet. It's on Cedar Lane, just 2 streets over from Lakeview Drive. The owners are relocating overseas and need to sell quickly. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, good bones but dated interior. They're asking $310,000, but I think they'd go lower for a clean offer. The photos showed a brick colonial with good structural elements, but cosmetically stuck in the 1990s. Oak cabinets, beige carpeting, floral wallpaper, all easily updatable. The yard was smaller than Tiffany's new cottage, but the house itself was larger. Can we see it tomorrow? I asked. I'll set it up. That night, I created a detailed budget spreadsheet. If I took the additional work Daniel offered, cut my already minimal expenses further, and liquidated some of my more conservative investments, I could potentially have a down payment ready within 4 months. It would mean no social life, no new clothes, no takeout meals, essentially working and sleeping and nothing else. Worth it, I whispered to my reflection as I prepared for bed. The next 6 months passed in a blur of 18-hour days. I took on the evening consultations at Heritage Financial, picked up weekend shifts at my online advising job, and sold anything in my apartment I didn't absolutely need. My refrigerator contained nothing but yogurt, sandwich fixings, and energy drinks. My social life consisted of weekly phone calls with Grandma Evelyn and occasional texts with Jessica. Thanksgiving came and went. I begged off the family gathering, claiming a work emergency. For Christmas, I made a brief appearance at my parents' house, bringing modest gifts and deflecting questions about my obvious weight loss and exhaustion. Just busy at work. I told my mother when she commented that I looked tired. Year-end is always crazy in finance. Well, you should take better care of yourself, she said. Before turning to admire the expensive leather boots my father had given Tiffany, I occasionally checked Tiffany's Instagram, watching as she documented the transformation of her gifted cottage with new furniture, professional painting, and landscaping, all paid for by our parents, based on her captions thanking them for their generosity. Meanwhile, my own plans progressed. The house on Cedar Lane had been vacant for decades, neglected by an elderly owner who had moved to assisted living. After a thorough inspection revealed good bones beneath the cosmetic issues, I made an offer of $285,000, which was quickly accepted. Congratulations, Mason said when we signed the final paperwork in February. You're a homeowner. The renovation began immediately. I hired contractors for the structural work, updating electrical systems, replacing the roof, installing new windows, while planning to handle cosmetic updates myself. Every evening and weekend for the next 3 months, I painted, stripped wallpaper, sanded floors, and installed light fixtures. You look like you haven't slept in weeks, Jessica commented when we met for our monthly lunch in April. Is it worth it? I showed her photos of the house's transformation, the kitchen with new quartz countertops and gleaming appliances, the living room with restored hardwood floors and fresh paint, the primary bathroom with a walk-in shower and soaking tub. It's going to be worth every sleepless night, I assured her. Through it all, my family remained oblivious. No one called to check on me despite my prolonged absence from family gatherings. Mom texted occasionally with updates about Tiffany's latest crisis: a leaky faucet, trouble programming the garage door opener, complaints about the property taxes on her free house. Only Grandma Evelyn knew what I was doing, visiting the property several times during renovation. It's magnificent, she declared during her final visit in May, when the house was nearly complete. Absolutely magnificent. And you did this all yourself, Amber. No handouts, no help. That was the point, I said quietly, standing in the finished kitchen that outshone anything in Tiffany's cottage. To prove I could. The question is, Grandma said, settling into one of the bar stools at the kitchen island, how and when do you want to reveal this to the family? I smiled, the plan I'd been formulating for months now crystallized. I think it's time for a family dinner. Here. Spring melted into summer as I balanced my demanding career with completing the final touches on my new home. Each small victory, hanging the last curtain rod, placing the final bookshelf, planting the flower beds that would greet visitors, felt like a personal triumph over years of being overlooked. At Heritage Financial, my extra efforts had not gone unnoticed. In June, Daniel called me into his office, closing the door for privacy. The client feedback from your evening consultations has been exceptional, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. So exceptional, in fact, that we've created a new position, Director of New Client Financial Planning. It comes with a corner office and a 40% salary increase. I stared at the offer letter, momentarily speechless. You've earned this, Amber, Daniel continued. No one works harder or shows more dedication to our clients. That evening, I celebrated alone in my new house, a single glass of champagne on the back patio as I watched the sunset paint the sky in triumphant shades of gold and pink. I pulled out my phone to share the news with my family, thumbs hovering over the screen before I put it away. This victory, like my house, would be revealed at the right moment. As June progressed, I furnished my home room by room, selecting each piece with care. The dining room table that could seat 8 for family gatherings. The comfortable sectional in the living room positioned to encourage conversation. The guest bedrooms prepared with fresh linens and reading lamps, awaiting visitors who didn't yet know they were welcome. Throughout this period, my relationship with Mason had evolved from strictly professional to something approaching friendship. He'd stop by regularly during renovations, offering advice on everything from paint colors to landscape design. The The transformation is incredible, he said during one such visit, helping me install a porch swing. Most first-time homeowners take years to accomplish what you've done in months. I've had a lot of motivation, I replied, thinking of Tiffany's cottage and the job listing that still sat in my bedside drawer. Would you like to get dinner sometime? He asked suddenly. Not to discuss real estate, just dinner. The question caught me off guard. Between 2 jobs and home renovation, I'd put my personal life on indefinite hold. I'm not sure I'd be good company right now. I think you'd be excellent company, he countered. But no pressure. The offer stands when you're ready. I found myself smiling. I'll let you know after my family dinner next weekend. Meanwhile, my relationship with my family had grown increasingly distant. Holiday texts, occasional group chat messages about Tiffany's latest drama, a fender bender in the new car our parents had bought her, a disagreement with a neighbor about property lines, complaints about the tiny closet in her master bedroom. How are you doing, sweetheart? Mom had asked during our last phone conversation, her tone distracted. Actually, I have some news to share, I began. That's nice, she interrupted. Listen, your father and I are helping Tiffany install a hot tub this weekend. Could you come over and help move some furniture? She wants to redecorate the living room again. I closed my eyes, counting silently to 10. I'm afraid I can't. I'm busy with a project of my own. Oh, the surprise in her voice was evident. Well, I'm sure we'll manage. No questions about my project. No follow-up about my news. It was the final confirmation I needed. The following day, I sent a group text to my parents and Tiffany. I'd like to host a family dinner next Saturday at 7 p.m. I have news to share. Address to follow. Please RSVP. The responses came quickly. Mom. What news? Are you okay? Dad. Is something wrong? Tiffany. OMG, are you pregnant? I didn't respond to their questions, simply sending the address the day before with instructions to arrive promptly at 7. As the day approached, I prepared meticulously. I ordered catering from my parents' favorite restaurant. I selected a sophisticated outfit, a navy blue dress that highlighted the confidence I'd built over months of proving myself. I arranged fresh flowers throughout the house. Their sweet scent a counterpoint to the bitterness I was finally releasing. Saturday dawned clear and warm. I spent the morning in final preparations, arranging place settings, chilling wine, adjusting lighting to showcase the home's best features. At 6, the catering staff arrived to set up the dining room buffet. At 6:50, I positioned myself on the front porch, ready to greet my family for the first time as the mistress of a home that rivaled no surpassed, the cottage they'd given my sister. Precisely at 7, a car pulled into the driveway. Game time. My parents' silver SUV rolled to a stop in my circular driveway, followed moments later by Tiffany in her red convertible. Another gift they'd given her for her 25th birthday. I watched from my position on the wide front porch as they emerged, confusion evident on their faces as they took in the manicured lawn, professional landscaping, an imposing brick facade of what was clearly not an apartment building. Are we at the right address? I heard Mom ask Dad, consulting her phone. This is what she sent, he confirmed, looking around with furrowed brows. Maybe it's her boyfriend's place? Tiffany spotted me first. There she is. Amber, whose house is this? It's huge. I descended the porch steps slowly, conscious of presenting the calm, confident image I'd rehearsed. Good evening. Thank you for coming. Honey, are we in the right place? Mom asked, air-kissing my cheek. This can't be your apartment. No, it's not my apartment, I agreed, opening the front door wide. Welcome to my home. Please come in. Their confused expressions deepened as they stepped into the soaring foyer with its crystal chandelier and curved staircase. Dad's eyes darted from the hardwood floors to the crown molding, mentally calculating costs as he always did when entering a new space. Mom's gaze lingered on the artwork, original pieces I'd selected from local artists. Tiffany's mouth had fallen slightly open. Her usual stream of chatter momentarily halted. Let me give you a tour before dinner, I suggested, leading them through the formal living room with its cream-colored sectional and marble fireplace, into the gourmet kitchen with professional-grade appliances and quartz waterfall island. This is unexpected, Dad managed as I showed them the sunroom overlooking the backyard with its stone patio and fire pit. Whose place did you say this was? Tiffany asked again, trailing her fingers along the custom cabinetry in the butler's pantry. It's mine, I repeated. I purchased it in February and have been renovating since then. Purchased? Mom echoed, her voice rising slightly. How could you possibly afford a house like this? It must be worth at least $450,000 after renovations, I supplied, though the appraisal might come in higher given the current market. I continued the tour upstairs, showing them the master suite with its walk-in closet and luxury bathroom, the 2 guest rooms decorated in soothing neutral tones, and the home office where a framed diploma and professional certificates hinted at my success. I don't understand, Dad said when we returned downstairs. Where did you get this kind of money? Did you win the lottery? I gestured toward the dining room, where catering staff had laid out an elegant spread. Let's eat, and I'll explain everything. Throughout the meal, I answered their increasingly direct questions with calm precision. Yes, I had purchased the house myself. No, I didn't have a silent partner or secret inheritance. Yes, I had managed the renovations personally while maintaining my full-time career. But how? Tiffany demanded, her initial awe turning to something closer to irritation. You've always lived in that tiny apartment. You never mentioned saving for a house. I've been saving and investing since my first job at 19, I explained, pouring more wine for my parents. I've worked 2 jobs for the past 3 years. I've lived well below my means. And I recently received a significant promotion at Heritage Financial. Why didn't you tell us about any of this? Mom asked, looking hurt. I set my glass down carefully. The same reason you didn't ask. We've fallen into patterns in this family that didn't encourage that kind of sharing. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Dad shifted in his seat, his expression unreadable. Mom busied herself rearranging her silverware. Tiffany stared at her plate. I have something for you, I said finally, rising from the table and retrieving an elegantly wrapped package from the sideboard. I placed it before my parents. Dad untied the ribbon slowly, revealing a shadow box frame. Inside, carefully preserved, was the printout of the entry-level job listing they'd given me at their anniversary party. Beside it, I'd mounted my new business card. Amber Johnson, Director of New Client Financial Planning, Heritage Financial Group. I wanted to thank you, I said into the silence that followed. That job listing reminded me that I would always need to rely on myself for my success and happiness. It was the push I needed to stop waiting for approval or assistance. The color drained from my father's face as understanding dawned. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Tiffany's expression cycled rapidly from confusion to disbelief to something approaching shame. We never meant to make you feel. Dad began. Unworthy? Overlooked? Less valued than my sister. I finished for him. I know you didn't intend that, but intention doesn't negate impact. You've always been so capable, Mom said, tears forming in her eyes. You never seem to need anything from us. Everyone needs something from their parents, Mom. Even if it's just acknowledgement. This house, Dad gestured around, his voice unsteady. It's much nicer than the cottage we gave Tiffany. That wasn't my intention, I said honestly. I simply wanted a home that reflected my own achievements. A tangible reminder that I am enough, exactly as I am. Tiffany pushed back from the table abruptly. So this whole dinner was just to show us up? To make us feel bad about helping me? No, Tiffany. It was to introduce my family to my life. A life you've known very little about because no one ever asked. I maintained my calm tone. I'm happy for you and your cottage. This isn't a competition. It feels like one, she snapped, grabbing her purse. And apparently I've been losing for years without knowing it. Thanks for making that clear. She stormed toward the foyer. Tiffany, wait. Mom called, rising to follow. Let her go, I said quietly. She needs time to process this. The front door slammed, followed by the roar of her convertible's engine as she sped away. Dad sat motionless, staring at the shadow box. I don't know what to say, Amber. Except that I'm sorry. And I'm proud of you. More than I can express. Mom returned to the dining room, her makeup smeared from hastily wiped tears. We've made terrible mistakes, haven't we? We all have, I acknowledged. But recognizing them is the first step toward change. The rest of the evening passed in awkward but necessary conversation. For the first time in memory, my parents asked detailed questions about my life, my career, my goals. They listened without interruption as I described the long hours, the careful planning, the sacrifices that had led to this moment. When they finally left, the hug my father gave me felt different, respectful rather than perfunctory. My mother held on longer than usual, whispering, "I'm so sorry we didn't see you," into my ear. I stood on the porch watching their taillights disappear, feeling strangely hollow despite the victory. The house around me, beautiful, perfect, mine suddenly seemed too quiet, too empty. I reached for my phone and typed a quick message to Mason. Dinner went as expected. About that rain check. Are you free tomorrow night? His response came almost immediately. I'll pick you up at 7. I smiled, realizing that the evening's revelation wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The foundation for something new. In my family relationships and perhaps in other areas of my life as well. The house felt different after my family left, larger, emptier, echoing with unspoken words and emotions laid bare. I moved through the room slowly, extinguishing candles, gathering wine glasses, restoring order to the space that represented so much more than just a property investment. When the doorbell rang the following morning, I expected the catering staff returning for their equipment. Instead, I found my father standing on the porch, hands thrust deep in his pockets, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Can we talk? He asked, voice rough with what sounded like a sleepless night. I led him to the kitchen, where morning light streamed through windows overlooking the backyard. We sat at the island, coffee mugs between us like shields. I didn't sleep last night, he began, confirming my suspicion. I kept thinking about all the times you achieved something remarkable and how I just nodded and moved on, as if excellence from you was expected rather than celebrated. It was, I said simply. That doesn't make it right. He stared into his coffee. When did it start? This pattern of treating you and Tiffany so differently. I considered the question. Probably when we were very young. Tiffany was louder, more demanding of attention. I was quieter, more self-sufficient. It was easier to focus on the squeaky wheel. And then it became habit, he acknowledged. A terrible, unfair habit that none of us questioned. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I failed you as a father, Amber. Not because I didn't love you, but because I took your strength for granted. I am strong, I agreed. But that shouldn't have meant I had to be strong alone. Tears filled his eyes, the first I'd seen since my grandmother's funeral years earlier. I don't know if we can fix this. If you can forgive us. I'm not looking for dramatic apologies or grand gestures, I told him. Just awareness and effort moving forward. Real interest in my life. Equal treatment between your daughters. Your mother is devastated, he said after a moment. She wanted to come today, but she's with Tiffany, who's not taking this well. I didn't do this to hurt Tiffany. I know, but she's built her identity around being the special one. The one who needs extra help and attention. Seeing what you've accomplished independently has shaken her self-image. I nodded, understanding. She needs to find her own strength. Maybe this will help her discover it. My father stayed for another hour, asking thoughtful questions about my career, my home, my future plans. When he left, the hug he gave me felt authentic, father to daughter rather than parent to afterthought. My mother took longer to come around. 2 weeks passed before she called, her voice tentative on the phone. I'd like to bring lunch, she said. If you're free this Saturday. Over chicken salad and iced tea on my back patio, she alternated between defensive explanations and genuine remorse. We never meant to make you feel less loved, she insisted, rearranging her napkin for the third time. I know that intellectually, I replied, but actions communicate more powerfully than intentions. You seem so self-sufficient, she repeated my father's observation, so capable from such a young age. I became that way out of necessity, Mom. Because I realized early that I couldn't count on the support Tiffany received. Her face crumpled. That breaks my heart. I'm not saying this to hurt you, but we can't build something better without acknowledging what went wrong. By the end of lunch, something had shifted between us. Not healed completely, but nudged toward a healthier dynamic. She hugged me before leaving, really looking at me perhaps for the first time in years. You've created something beautiful here, she said, gesturing to the house. And I don't just mean the property. Tiffany proved the most difficult bridge to rebuild. She ignored my calls and texts for nearly a month before finally agreeing to meet at a neutral location. A coffee shop downtown. I feel like you ambushed us, she said immediately after sitting down, defensive anger radiating from her. Like you set up this whole elaborate gotcha moment to make us all feel terrible. That wasn't my intention. I replied calmly. But I understand why it felt that way to you. Do you have any idea how Mom and Dad have been since your dinner? Dad's making me create a budget. Mom suggested I might want to look for a better job. They've never questioned anything I've done before. I stirred my latte slowly. Maybe that hasn't been to your benefit in the long run. Easy for you to say. You're obviously doing fine without their help. I am now. But there were many times when their support, emotional if not financial, would have made a tremendous difference. Tiffany fell silent, studying her coffee cup. I didn't realize, she said finally, how differently they treated us. It just seemed normal. To both of us, I acknowledged. So what now? Are you expecting me to apologize for being their favorite? No. You didn't create the dynamic. You just benefited from it. I'm hoping we can build a more authentic relationship as sisters, without resentment or competition. She looked up, vulnerability replacing anger in her expression. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I exactly, I admitted. But I think it starts with getting to know each other as adults, not just as the roles we were assigned as children. The conversation that followed was halting but honest. For perhaps the first time, we spoke as equals rather than as the golden child and the overlooked one. We discovered shared interests we'd never discussed: true crime podcasts, spicy food, 90s rom-coms, and acknowledged our differences without judgment. When we parted 2 hours later, Tiffany hesitated before awkwardly initiating a hug. Your house really is amazing, she said. Maybe you could help me figure out how to budget for some updates to the cottage. I'd like that, I said, meaning it. Summer turned to fall, bringing gradual changes to more than just the foliage. My relationship with Mason evolved from casual dating to something more meaningful. He understood, without extensive explanation, my need for independence alongside connection. I admire how you've built your life on your terms, he told me one evening as we sat by the fire pit in my backyard. That kind of self-reliance is rare. It came at a cost, I admitted. I had to learn that being self-reliant doesn't mean doing everything alone. Family dinners became monthly occurrences, rotating between my house, my parents' home, and occasionally Tiffany's cottage. The dynamics weren't perfect, old patterns sometimes reasserted themselves, but awareness created space for adjustment rather than resentment. In November, I hosted Thanksgiving for the first time. Grandma Evelyn arrived early to help, her approval evident as she surveyed the preparations. You've done more than prove your worth, she said, arranging flowers in the dining room. You've created the opportunity for healing. I did it for myself first, I reminded her. The healing came after. As it should, she nodded. Self-respect before reconciliation. The family who gathered around my table that evening was different from the one I'd known all my life. My parents made conscious efforts to engage equally with both daughters. Tiffany shared news of her recent promotion at work, earned through her own merit rather than my parents' intervention. Mason's hand found mine under the table during difficult moments, grounding me. After dinner, as we enjoyed coffee and pie in the living room, Dad raised his mug in a toast. To Amber, he said, his voice steady, who taught us all that true strength lies in valuing yourself even when others don't. We're grateful for your forgiveness and the chance to do better. Tears pricked my eyes, but they weren't tears of hurt or resentment. They were acknowledgement of how far we'd come, and recognition of my own journey from overlooked daughter to self-made woman who had found her voice. That night, after everyone had left and Mason had gone home with plans to return the next day, I stood in my kitchen surveying the remnants of the gathering. Dishes in the sink, leftover pie on the counter, wine glasses waiting to be washed, evidence of a real family dinner with all its imperfect connections. My phone pinged with a text from Tiffany. "Thanks for hosting. I'm proud to be your sister." 6 simple words that meant everything. Looking around the home I'd created through determination and self-belief, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with property values or square footage. The house was beautiful, yes, but its true value lay in what it represented. The choice to define my own worth rather than waiting for others to assign it. Some wounds never heal completely. Some patterns never fully disappear. But standing in my kitchen that Thanksgiving night, I understood that moving forward doesn't require perfect resolution. Only the courage to value yourself enough to create the life you deserve, regardless of whether others see your worth. If you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued by those who should have been your biggest supporters, know that your worth isn't determined by their recognition. Build your life brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. The most powerful gift you can give yourself is the decision to be your own champion. I'd love to hear about times you've had to be your own advocate or supporter when others didn't see your value. Share your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in challenging family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worth isn't waiting for anyone's approval. It's already within you, waiting to be claimed.